The drones came first, ragged, buzzing, and cheap. Then came the missiles, the decoys, and the long-range strikes that slipped through seams Moscow once insisted did not exist. Tonight, we're pulling the curtain on a question the Kremlin has tried to drown out with bravado. Why are Russia's vaunted air defenses breaking down? And how did Ukraine learn, step by step, to exploit the cracks? This isn't a story of one silver bullet. It's a campaign of 1,000 cuts, mapped with patient reconnaissance, baited with decoys, and finished with precision that keeps forcing Russia's impenetrable shield to turn and face the wrong threat at the wrong time. The hook is brutal but simple. Air defenses are supposed to keep the sky closed, yet across 2 years, Ukraine has pried open corridors over occupied Crimea, pushed missiles and drones hundreds of kilometers into Russian territory, and, most humiliatingly, knocked out the very eyes and radars meant to warn of those attacks. In January 2024, an A-50 Mainstay, Russia's airborne early warning crown jewel, fell to a painstaking SAM bush that used a Patriot battery to punish a predictable flight pattern over the Sea of Azov. Lose the airborne quarterback, and your whole coverage scheme gets slower, blinder, more brittle. Western analysts later confirmed the Patriot ambush method, and it wouldn't be the last time Ukraine picked off the sensor that orchestrates the rest of the orchestra.
Патріота передбачені технічні можливості знищення балістичних цілей, тобто його своєчасно виявлення, перехоплення. Цілі, які летять по балістичній траєкторії, вони піднімаються на декілька десятків кілометрів, і потім також різко спускаються.
To understand how we got here, rewind to the textbook map of Russia's integrated air defense system. On paper, it's layered. Long-range S-400 and S-300 rings, mid-range Buk and S-350, point defense Tor and Pantsir, all tied to fixed and mobile radars, with fighters and AWACS stitched into a single picture. It's a Cold War idea modernized for the drone age, part radar picket line, part missile ambush alley. Early in the full-scale war, it worked well enough to keep Ukrainian jets cautious and the VKS reasonably bold. But by 2024, the dynamics were shifting. In Crimea, Ukrainian strike packages started landing hits on the showpieces, the S-400s themselves, by methodically hunting their radars and power. Kyiv publicly claimed repeated strikes on S-300/S-400 sites near Jankoy, Yevpatoria, Sevastopol and Belbek, with follow-on detonations indicating secondary explosions inside the system's support vehicles. Even the cautious wires acknowledged the pattern. More radars knocked out, more gaps to probe the next night. Crucially, Ukraine didn't simply get lucky. It learned. It learned that Russia's long-range batteries are only as lethal as their 91 N6/92 N6 and 96 L6 radars, their generators, and their command posts. It learned that you can create an opening by blinding one battery, forcing the neighbor to light up and reveal itself. And it learned to choreograph, decoys first, then one-way attack drones, then a finishing strike with ATACMS or other precision weapons when the defenders had exhausted interceptors or betrayed positions with their own emissions. Analysts tracking the conflict noted how Ukrainian planners became highly efficient at routing UAVs around known threat rings, while Russia scrambled to elevate more Pantsir point defense units on towers to protect key nodes. You don't waste a $500,000 missile on a $20,000 drone if you can help it, but you'll still switch on the radar that gives your position away. And then came the headline moments that rattled doctrine. The A-50, taken down by a surface-to-air ambush, was one. A cascade of S-400 groupings in Crimea being torn open by night raids was another. In late 2024, ATACMS cluster warhead strikes began chewing up airfields and their associated air defenses, sometimes after nearby S-400 radars had been blinded. When launchers or their radar masts cook off on video, it's hard to argue the system is unaffected. You can argue about how many and how quickly Russia replaces them, but not about the fact that the network is being degraded. So why are Russia's defenses bending? Start with geometry. Moscow wanted to guard everything: front lines, logistics hubs, the Black Sea coast, Crimea, the Kerch Bridge, refineries, air bases, and even Moscow's skyline. You can layer missiles over a battlefield, or you can blanket a continent. You can't do both with finite launchers, crews, and interceptors. As Ukraine's deep strike campaign expanded, especially its drone blitz against refineries and depots, Russia began redeploying precious air defense assets to shield the oil sector and other strategic nodes far from the front. By October 2025, Russia's own generals were asking reservists to help defend industrial infrastructure after months of strikes deep inside Russia. Every Tor or Pantsir pulled to babysit a refinery is one less short-range bubble to protect an S-400 battery in Crimea. Every long-range unit moved inland reshapes the seams at the front. Next, ammunition. Air defense is a supply chain problem with a radar attached. If you're firing daily at drones, cruise missiles, and decoys, your stockpiles drain quickly, and your industry must sprint to keep pace. Reporting on Russia's increasingly just-in-time use of newer missiles underscored a simple reality. Sanctions complicate precision weapon production, and older stocks dwindle. Use newer variants as soon as they roll off the line, and you're signaling that demand is outrunning comfortable supply. Running a nationwide IADS on thin margins invites risk. The moment a mass raid appears at the wrong place, there's less depth left to absorb it. Then there's the cat and mouse of decoys. Russia leaned into fake drones to exhaust Ukrainian interceptors and to scout for firing positions, and Ukraine mirrored the logic, seeding the radar picture with cheap ghosts so the real penetrators could slip through. Every false target that forces a Pantsir to shoot and miss is a micro-victory for the attacker's ledger. Ukrainian intelligence publicly highlighted Russia's use of unarmed Gerbera/Parodia decoys and plywood lookalikes. Western researchers chronicled how these systems ride along with Shaheds as spotters and distractions. The counter isn't magic, it's hunting the radars that guide the guns and missiles, and then making those radars pay. Ukrainian special operators and intelligence units became the scalpel in that hunt. In 2025, the Security Services Alpha Group released a ledger of the havoc they'd wrought. Billions in damage to Russian air defenses, from S-300/S-400 components to Nebo and Gamma-D radars, achieved through deep reconnaissance and precision strikes that open corridors for waves of long-range drones. Government claims need salt, but even skeptics can't ignore how often video from Crimea has shown radar vehicles or power units exploding in sequence. The telltale signs of a radar-centric kill chain. If you can't see, you can't shoot. And if you light up to see, someone is waiting with coordinates. Let's talk about the Patriot SAM, because that tactic became a masterclass in bending a superior air power into a kill zone. Ukraine exploited the habit. After earlier strikes had degraded fixed radars in Crimea, Russian aircraft and relay planes adjusted orbits to fill the gap. Ukrainian planners predicted the adjustment, tucked a Patriot launcher within reach, masked its emissions, and waited until the A-50 wandered into the engagement envelope before the radar blinked on and the missile flew. The lesson isn't just that Patriots can kill big planes at long range. It's that Russia's command and control picture is stitched from predictable patterns. If you write that script for them, you can also write the ending. On the peninsula, the playbook kept evolving. Ukrainian night raids focused on the S-400's multifunction 92N6 radar and the 96L6 acquisition radar, plus the power supplies that keep both alive. Hit the eyes and the heart. Mix drone types and headings so defenders must either reveal multiple batteries or let some threats through. Once a radar dies, the battery's long-range missile tubes are just expensive street furniture until someone tows a spare in, through a traffic jam of scorched roads and reconnaissance eyes that never blink. After several such raids, even pro-Kremlin channels grumbled about holes in coverage around key sites. Ukraine had learned to run the table, blind one node, force another to take the shot, and finish with a weapon the enemy didn't expect from that direction. There is a strategic irony here. Russia's IADS doctrine prizes integration. Network the radars, tie in the fighters, distribute shooters. But integration cuts both ways. If your network is tight, a single lost sensor degrades many shooters. If your doctrine leans on specific high-value nodes, the AWACS aloft, the long-range search radars ashore, your adversary doesn't need to kill every launcher. They just need to break the brains and the eyes and let the rest wither. Russ's late 2025 work on Russian air defense production emphasizes how central these systems are to the war's outcome. They suppress Ukraine's aged air force and shield Russia's war economy. That is precisely why Ukraine persists in going after them. Every radar destroyed is more than a cool explosion. It's less cover for the next refinery, the next airbase, the next bridge.
So what did Ukraine learn, specifically? First, that cost exchange rules the sky. You win when you make the defender spend $1 million interceptor on a $2,000 target. Or, better yet, when you make them turn on a radar, so you can hunt it with a cheaper, drone-delivered warhead. Second, that time is a weapon. Hit 3 sites over 2 nights, and the third night will be full of hasty redeployments, improvisation, and mistakes. Third, that you can program an opponent who loves procedure. The A-50 loss was the proof of concept. Set the conditions, let the opponent follow their own standard operating procedure, and punish the moment their playbook forces them through the ambush. Finally, learn the ecosystem. Attack the generators. Attack the 92 N6. Attack the 96 L6. Deny the 3 elements that turn a battery into a barrier: vision, power, and command. Ukraine also learned to think like logistics officers. Russia has to defend long front lines and deeper industry at the same time, with air defense components that can't be everywhere and missile stocks that can't be infinite. When drone strikes on refineries surged, Moscow pulled air defenses inward and even sought extra headcount just to watch the fences around those plants. Every such redeployment was a GPS pin for Ukrainian planners. A hole here means a corridor there, so send the next package through that gap. Likewise, hitting air defense spares and tech crews matters. A radar you can't repair is worth more than a launcher you can replace. And when you force defenders to protect everything, they end up protecting nothing perfectly. To be clear, Russia's air defenses aren't collapsing across the board. In fact, the enemy has adapted too, tightening fighter GBAD cooperation and cycling new counter-drone tricks. By 2025, Russian fighter crews had years of combat time against a dense Ukrainian umbrella, and analysts noted more disciplined integration between ground missiles and VKS fighters. Moscow also experimented with lasers and more aggressive electronic warfare to shred or misguide incoming drones. The scoreboard remains contested, and on many nights, Russia still throws punishing salvos at Ukraine's cities, with plenty getting through. But that only sharpens the core lesson. The side that evolves its kill chains faster, sensing, deciding, striking, wins the air defense duel inch by inch. Which brings us to the How to Break a Shield field manual, as written in Ukrainian. Step 1. Make the defender guess wrong. Launch decoys to force emissions. Use one-way drones to map the shooters that light up and the ones that stay dark. Keep your real hitters low, quiet, and late. Step 2. Blind the battery. Prioritize the radar and the power. Step 3. Widen the hole. Follow the first kill with a second that punishes the neighbor who tried to cover the gap. Step 4. Exploit the corridor immediately. Send the next wave through before the opponent can re-rack. Step 5. Repeat until the defender is playing whack-a-mole in 5 time zones. That is how those impossible strikes landed in locations pundits once labeled immune.
It's not all missile glamour. Sometimes the key move is simply using geography and schedule. Hit at shift change. Attack from azimuths the operators least expect. Stack threats, seaborne drones to fix attention along the coast, while airborne drones slip in from the rear. Pair a handful of larger munitions with dozens of cheap ones to force defenders to waste interceptors. If the radar crews know they'll be targeted the instant they radiate, many will radiate less. That buys you distance and seconds, and sometimes that's the whole ballgame. And yes, there's showmanship here too. Russia elevating Pantsirs on city rooftops and parking S-400s in concentric rings around prestige assets looks impressive. It's also a confession. The adversary believes you can reach them, so they're moving expensive gear to protect landmarks and industry. Meanwhile, Ukraine keeps the pressure on Crimea, because Crimea is the bridgehead, the place where Russian defenses must be strongest and still keep getting peeled back. Each burnt radar there echoes across the map.
One caveat, because sober beats hype. The defender's paradox is that even a degraded IADS can still be lethal where it's thickest. Russia's fighters and ground batteries, when focused, still ruin days for Ukrainian pilots and blunt many deep strike waves. Ukraine's answer has been to scale cheaper interceptors and mobile fire groups to defend its own cities, even as it saves precious patriots for the lethal ambushes and the truly hard targets. That's the future. Fleets of interceptor drones and gun systems catching swarms at short range, while the big, expensive SAMs are reserved for high-value shots, the next mainstay, the next bomber, the next long-range radar that thinks it's safe 200 kilometers from the front. So where does this go? Expect more of the same, but faster. Ukraine will continue to dismantle the architecture, rather than chase every missile. Radar by radar, generator by generator, AWACS by AWACS if the opportunity returns. Meanwhile, Russia will thicken coverage around petroleum, chemicals and transport nodes, because that's where Ukraine has hurt it most, and the Kremlin knows refinery fires can't be spun forever. The more assets Russia drags inward, the thinner the shell over occupied territory and the front. The thinner that shell, the more openings appear for long-range precision, for ATACMS-like punctures, and for the quiet little drones that turn million-dollar problems into $1,000 solutions. In a different war, you could win the sky by winning a single battle. Not here. Here, the air war is a campaign of systems and habits, of forcing the other side to play your rhythm. Russia's air defenses aren't failing everywhere, every night, but more often, in more places that matter. They're being shaped, baited to radiate, thinned by redeployment, starved by supply, blinded at the edges, and occasionally decapitated in the center. Ukraine learned the choreography. It learned that you don't need to be stronger to be smarter, that you don't need to win every exchange to win the ledger, and that the most expensive systems in the world still run on human patterns. And patterns can be trapped. Call it the new arithmetic of the sky. If it costs you a drone and costs them a radar, you're winning. If it costs you a decoy and costs them a missile, you're winning. If it costs you a week of planning and costs them a year of production, you're winning. That's why the shield is cracking. Not because it was a myth, but because every shield, once mapped and stressed and starved, starts to creak. The only question left is whether Ukraine can keep the tempo high enough to break not just a battery or a base, but the war-making logic that depends on that shield to keep standing. And if you're in a bunker plotting the next rotation of radars, here's your uncomfortable truth. The hardest thing to defend is everything. The easiest thing to attack is the habit you cannot change. That's the lesson the A-50 wrote in smoke over the Sea of Azov. That's the lesson the night raids keep writing across Crimea's coastline. And that's the lesson Ukraine is betting the rest of this war on. One corridor, one radar, one ambush at a time. Because in the end, the sky doesn't care how many rings you draw on a map. It cares who senses first, who decides faster, and who makes the other side pay more for every minute of survival. On that scoreboard, Ukraine has learned to turn Russia's greatest strength into a burden. And every time a radar goes dark, another piece of the myth does too.